So we're going to get into it, and I think we've all kind of got our own lists, and we're going to try and come up with the all-time list, indisputable list, bulletproof. That's the game plan. Who wants to kick it off? Who's confident in their list?
I think the obvious choice, especially if you're going by monologues, is Doctor Doom. Like what Hickman did with him, what so many writers have done with him. He is able to be pretentious at the same time as being intimidating as hell.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's a really... I mean, I think that was pretty much all our
I like
choices.
your monologue criteria. I don't think anybody in comics says like as cool as shit as Doctor Doom does. I totally agree with Nick. Doctor Doom is my number one Marvel villain. In my opinion, it's not even close. I think Doctor Doom he looks cool. Like, he's super iconic, right? And his costume, like, always looks sweet. It's easy to draw, but there's a lot of depth to, like, the creepy eyes coming through, like, the slits. The mask, everyone loves that mask. It's super iconic. The mouth drawing thing that Jack Kirby did back in the day is, like, such a subtle thing, but it's just pure freaking genius, man. I think that, like, goes such a long way. Like Nick says, he says the coolest shit. Like, there's that point in the Master of Doom story arc where he, like, basically like goes like literally through all of time and back again, getting tortured a long way and owned a long way. He scoops up his mask and puts it on. He's just like, go through a whole thing like, how did you survive? What did you do? He's like, how did I do it? I did it because I'm Doom and stuff. And that was just the end of the story. And it was like, oh god, yes.
The other thing about Doom is that he's not, as much as he's a villain, like he still cares about people, his people. Like he cares about the area because they belong to him.
Yeah.
And he does what's best for them because it reflects well on him.
It's one of the cool things about him is that he's like the hero in his story, right? Like, for sure.
I was going to list off just my 2 cents as well. It's just like the powers thing, I think, is a huge part of it, where not only is he a scientist who knows like how to make all these crazy gadgets and shoot lightning,
but
he's
like
also dwelled
Tony
in
Stark
magic.
And Reed.
Yeah, but also like knows magic and also knows all sorts of things. So I think it's just the variety of Doctor Doom that for me really gets it, where... As a kid, when I was first starting to get into...
Because he can fight everyone.
Yeah, I was like, oh, dang, what doesn't he do?
Because he can fight Doc Strange, he can fight Spidey, he can fight Hulk, you know what I mean? Like, I think, man, it's crazy. It's definitely, like, the best book that Marvel is shipping us for free because they can't sell. Doctor Doom right now. That comic's actually surprisingly really good, man.
See, I was looking at picking that one up, but I knew it wasn't selling, so I was like, is this good? But then apparently it is.
Most of the other ones are trash, because that's why they send us stuff for free, because they can't sell it to people. But Doom is 100% top of my list. That was an easy one for me. Was number one.
If I can bring a pair of punching gloves to this...
I want to hear this.
Yeah. So here's the thing. If I should... backtrack and say if Doctor Doom is solidified as number one on the list, I would not even be upset by that, right? To me, I feel like that's pretty unarguable. Yeah. But if I'm going on a personal thought here, the one that just beats Doctor Doom for me by a smidgen is Magneto. And the reason I would say Magneto, I know technically maybe he's not quite as powerful as Doctor Doom, but the thing that I think Magneto has that Doctor Doom doesn't is I think he has a crazier backstory that makes people care more about him than they would say care about Doctor Doom. Like, he's a Holocaust survivor, and he's the one villain that everyone kind of looks at, and when he starts talking about mutant and humankind, they're kind of like, yeah, I know this is propaganda, but he kind of has a point.
He's like one of the most justified villains.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I think a sympathetic villain, for me, always kind of takes the cake more than, like, an awesome villain at the end of the day. Like,
I think a part of the sympathy is the fact that he's, like, had, like, a really rich... rich publication history, you know what I mean? So not even just like the Holocaust background, but the fact that he's had a lot of character development and kind of change and direction and depth over time, right?
Yeah.
Whereas Doom, in his fantastic awesomeness, really is kind of the same guy he's been since the 60s, where he's just, you know, he doesn't need to change. That would be my argument. But man, I gotta say, like, Magneto is hard to fight Magneto as like one of their best villains.
He's definitely in my list.
All right, Will, dazzle us with your number one. I'm sure it's going to be hot trash.
So my number one villain is the Blob. I joke. It's
okay.
Get him.
I was like, so talking of X-Men villains who are hokey.
The ultimate villain is myself, and the writer that is known as blank.
I'm not gonna lie. I was open-minded to it. I was going to be like, interesting choice, but maybe he's got some points I haven't thought of.
It just reveals that you're just nicer than I am. I was like, what the F is the matter with you, you piece of shit? You take this seriously.
So, We can all argue. We can all say
Mm.
Doom is definitely at least number 1 or like 1.5. You know who's more badass than Doom? The man who taught Doom.
Yeah,
Oh,
the
yeah.
Marquis of Death.
coming. I knew this was coming.
He's sick. He's a guy who's like from our universe, our world, and he's like has powers to create. So like all the characters from Marvel and stuff, he's been writing villains and stuff, and they've been spawning in that world.
So, anybody who doesn't know the history of Marquis of Death, he's got one comic story, and it's absolutely spectacular. It's called The Masters of Doom. He, like, literally, like, shows up in Latveria, like, tears the armor off of Doom, like, beats the hell out of him, and then throws him back to the beginning of time to get eaten by megalodons.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's how Doom becomes Doom.
That's, like, three whole... pages, and that's like how you get introduced to this guy.
But it's so sick because he's the reason why I like him is because he succeeds kind of where Doom kind of like it's in the book too. He's like you failed, Doom, because it took you so how long to conquer your enemies, and he's just like going in like, you guys destroyed my life, and he's going like to every universe, killing the Fantastic Four and making them watch all their loved ones suffer. And it's just this awesome, sick, like, true evil character just wanting revenge.
He is like super, super, super evil, and it is
it's
just
so
a
good.
great Doom story too.
Yeah.
I think that if you want to talk about power levels, he's like right up there too, because that guy literally can remake the universe. You know what I mean?
Oh,
Like
it's
just
so
change
sick.
things. It's like, hey, you don't exist anymore, man. It's like having the Infinity Gauntlet, but you just do it, right? Like
Yeah.
it's like Franklin Richards level, right?
It's definitely one of the more twisted stories of Marvel I've read in the main semi-universe. Marquis is definitely my number 1. Doom
That's
is
fair.
like 1.5, but I'm like, everyone's gonna say Doom, so I wanted to choose my
You're trying to pick your
My
favorite. So
number
this is
one.
like your true favorite number 1.
real number 1 is Doom, but my favorite is
Yeah, okay.
is
So
Marquis.
so if you were like objectively, you might pick Doom, but if it was like in your heart, in Will's heart, it's Marquis all the
Yeah,
way.
it's like
all right,
a tie
that's fair.
between
I can
the
give
two.
you that. Yeah, man. That's like I would never argue that. That's legit. I'm interested in who you have at number 3 then. Who do you got at number 3?
3 is Thanos.
3 is Thanos? Are we getting into Thanos here?
Yeah.
I like Thanos. I think Thanos deserves the top 5 just for like his what's the word I'm looking
so
for? His
iconic.
resume alone. His he's super
so
iconic.
right
Yeah.
now.
And like his resume of like the original Cosmic Cube story, his battles against the original Captain Marvel, the best Captain Marvel in my opinion.
Maybe you guys can answer me this question. So I did research on these characters, and I have notes down here. So for Thanos, I have shoots plasma. Was that an actual thing?
Yeah, so because Thanos has got like the crazy space tech and he's a genius, he like literally has like plasma blasters on his wrist.
Oh,
I
he has
guess.
like the
It's-
bracelet guns.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's not like from his hands.
Yeah.
He's a titan.
I
He
was
is-
reading that, and it was just like he had like the glaive. He's super smart tactician. He can shoot plasma, and just no explanation.
Will's just like he's like horking plasma loogies across the battlefield.
He has the powers of both an eternal and
And a deviant.
and deviant, which makes him insanely powerful.
Yeah.
And it's also why he is the way he is, because of the discrimination he faced. And they go into that in the backstory as well.
That's a really cool graphic novel. That's
Yeah.
the Thanos Rising
Yeah.
miniseries. Yeah. I gotta say that especially if we're talking about him, I much prefer comic Thanos to movie Thanos.
Yes.
Not
Yeah.
that movie Thanos is bad. The movie Thanos is just so empathetic. You know what I mean? Like, because his whole idea for his plot is like, hey, we got half the universe can survive. It's like, well, that's a twisted, way to do it, and that's insane. But it's also, you know what I mean? Like I said, he like apologizes the whole time. He's always got like a forlorn look on his face, like, look, I'm really sorry, but this is the way it has to be, right?
Is he like the Magneto of the movies?
Like sort of, like he just, you know what I mean? And he's this big badass. Whereas like in the comics, he's just doing it because he can, because he's absolutely
waifu.
bonkers, right?
Yeah,
He's totally
he
crazy.
wants-
Yeah.
And like he wants to be with Death, and he never can. Is part of the thing.
Yeah. Trying to
Um,
win Mistress Death's hand.
yeah.
She's always kind
And
of
he does
screwed.
something to Deadpool, and then that's how we get Deadpool.
But
Deadpool.
that's part of why it works, I think, in the comics too, because you don't have like the pressure to have a resolution by like ending Thanos. You his whole fascination with death and like her spurning him and like that over and over. They've like had that, and then he like goes away from her, and he always goes back, right?
Yeah.
And that's like I think what makes it genius in the comics, because then you always have. He always has motivation to do his Thanos
Yeah.
stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and he's like a jilted lover. So like,
Yeah.
it's weird to think of him that way, but he'll get over her occasionally, and then eventually always go back.
And Thanos says sweet shit.
Yeah, that's
He
that's
is.
the main reason.
I love Jim Starlin writing
Yes.
Thanos. I could get into that forever. I understand how some people can kind of get a little tired of it because the space opera is so over the top, and that sometimes on his like soliloquies, he's just so ridiculous. But he's awesome. I think that's part of what makes him so great.
That's part of my monologue criteria. It's
Yeah,
up there.
I think Marvel does those types of villains like better than they do the more grounded villain, right? So it's less like I think that part of what makes Batman's rogue gallery so attractive is that there's a lot of guys who's just like, this guy's gonna murder your family, but it's terrifying, and they've got a lot of really good comics that like go with it because that's basically Joker in a nutshell, right? Or Victor Zsasz, who I think is a really good like B tier
Terrifying character,
villain,
yeah.
because he can just show up and do stuff, and it's great. You got him there when you need him, right?
Tell us
Right.
your number 3. I'm waiting for Mike.
My
to go
number
off.
3.
I'm waiting for
This
Mike
is
to
my
go off on this.
Well, here's the thing. I think Mike even brought up a good point of like a lot of the Marvel villains are the world-ending ones. So my number 3 is really different, and I know some people will rise their fists at this, but I had Carnage as my number 3 from Spider-Man. Here's my thought on that. So just kind of going off of what Mike said too, right? There's not many like actual serial killers in the Marvel universe, right? And then you get Cletus Cassidy, who is, and when you read some Carnage comics, you're like, holy crap, yeah, this guy says some really freaky stuff. It's it actually feels like a real serial killer, and you could sort of psychologically unpack him a little bit. So here's where I kind of differed from myself, and I kind of forced myself to put Carnage because technically I like Venom better, but I just thought Carnage was objectively a better villain if I was trying to make this list objective.
Pick like actual villains.
I also think he's sort of like the peak of the symbiote story, where you see the symbiote get on Peter Parker, and you see what happens when it gets on someone who is actually like got a good heart. You see it get on someone who's like just a bitter, angry person, like Eddie Brock, who maybe wouldn't have killed people before, and now he is. I
Yeah.
think in some versions maybe he was. But then it gets on, and that's
Like an
the
actual
thought of
bad
like,
person.
what if, right?
Yeah.
What if an actual serial killer had this amount of power? And now, in more recent events too, if I'm going to argue them a little further, right? If we're establishing power level, I mean, Absolute Carnage just came out not that long ago. I feel like history is going to solidify that as a big part of Carnage, that there was a time where he actually could just take over the world. He's flicking pieces of symbiotes on people. They're also becoming little
That's a big one
Carnages.
because that's like really his push to be like an actual world threat, right? Like, whereas before he was more of like Maximum Carnage, we're gonna kill a bunch of people in New York threat.
Right.
First of all, no. No. Okay. Carnage is awesome. But the reason why I left Venom and Carnage firmly off of this list, and like the main reason, is that I think they aren't the best Spider-Man villain. The other thing with Venom and Carnage is that I don't think they've had enough like good stories. They like had their debuts at the end of the 80s, and they were really cool, and those were awesome stories. But they really survived for like a long time on cool. I think Carnage is one of the villains that Marvel handles the best because they only use him like every 2 or 3 years. Every time he shows up, they do something awesome with him. So I can respect people who dig Carnage, but I think there's like deeper Spidey villains. I think that the big debate for me was Green Goblin or Dr. Octopus.
That was another one I was having too when I was debating Spider-Man
Yeah.
villains as a whole.
There was a while there when they were building up to Superior Spider-Man where they really tried to put over Ock as like, he's the best villain. But I don't think you ever beat the Green Goblin. That's number 3 on my list.
That's fair.
Over Thanos. What makes Goblin such a good villain for me, and why I think he's interesting in ways that Doom and Magneto aren't, is that it's so personal. You know what I mean? It's so personal with him. Because every time he shows up and Norm is Goblin again, like, you know shit's going on, right? Because no one's safe. Like, no one is safe. MJ's like up for grabs. Aunt May is up for grabs. Like Harry's kid Normie too, right? Like at the end of the whole Red Goblin thing. Like, and I think the Red Goblin thing was like pretty cool as well. I think
that's marrying our 2 3s.
yeah, right. Like there we
Bringing
go.
Carnage
Red
and
Goblin,
Green
number
together.
3. I think that
Compromised.
I think that killing Gwen Stacy is such a huge moment too. When have they ever killed the love interest? You know what I mean? Like actually killed them. right?
The thing I find funny, and I'm agreeing with you, but the ironic thing is that in Ultimate Comics, the Ultimate Spider-Man, Carnage is the one who kills Gwen Stacy and not the Green Goblin, which I think is
They
it's
just
kind
do
of a
it
funny.
backwards.
Yeah.
Technically, she like becomes Carnage after getting
Yeah.
killed and turning into goop or something. It's weird. It
Technically,
gets-
that's
yeah.
like
It's the
50
Ultimate
issues
Universe.
later when they were like the Clone Saga. I don't know.
That was
Who
like
knows?
getting late into the Ultimate Spider-Man. The
Yeah.
wheels were starting to come off a bit, but it was cool. Yeah, Nick's right. It was weird. It was post-Ultimatum. Things happened, man.
Yeah.
We had to do something. Everyone was dead.
Post Ultimatum, I'm free Hickman.
So I had like Green Goblin as like my top Spider-Man villain, just because I think he's got the history. I think he's like. I find him more terrifying as a villain because it's so personal.
Right,
You know what
yeah.
I mean? And I think that goes a long way. But that was to reveal mine frickin' one. That was mine. That's my big Carnage argument.
Yeah, that's fair.
Rebuttal?
And that's well, that's the thing. Like I think you could almost sway. I could be easily swayed on this either way. I wouldn't like take this to my grave, being like, no, it's Carnage. But
The history angle is also like I think Green Goblin goes a long way to developing Marvel as a brand early in, right? Because he's like Spidey's first best villain. You know what I mean? Okay, question: what's the deal with his hair? Is it cornrows?
I've always wondered this since I was a
don't think
kid.
So I think it's like just a callback to the early color.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it just stayed.
Yeah.
Because the artists like it because they're all fans of the early
Oh, for sure. But now I'm just like, you know what I mean? Like, what was like Ditko trying to convey there? Because I think he did actually great faces, especially for
Yeah.
the '60s. Like, he did really, really emotive stuff.
Yeah.
So it's just like, what were you going for there?
I just thought there were stripes. Like I just started assuming he had like black hair with red stripes.
Yeah.
And that was it. That was
might-
it. Might not be that.
It's like
but-
the glare, right? Of
Yeah.
really dark hair, you know? Like,
It's the
Yeah,
same
that's
way,
what I was
like-
thinking.
yeah.
Yeah, Joker is sometimes drawn with black hair with like that green line through
Yeah,
it, right?
yeah. Okay, so who's Nick got it for?
It was having a nihilist.
A nihilist?
Yes, I was really debating putting him at 405. He ended up a bit lower, but I was like, I'm giving him a shout out because I think he's sick. I'd make arguments for that. I want to hear what you have to say about him.
My main reason is because I love Marvel Cosmic. And like he's the quintessential cosmic villain to me since I love the Dan Abnett stuff.
Yeah.
So he's great, and he's a Fantastic Four villain, and when he shows up in that, he's great.
I love Fantastic Four villains.
Yeah, they're so weird at the same time as being awesome.
They're always like outright villainous too.
Yeah.
Like a nihilist, kind of like he's even like more so than Thanos. Like there's no bargaining with a nihilist more than
Yeah.
any of these other guys we've been talking about,
Yeah,
right? Like
yeah. And with the nihilist, you have an annihilation wave. I'll make an argument that doesn't really involve the character that much, but what was going on at the same time as the annihilation wave? Civil War, which was a bigger threat.
like definitely annihilation.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
100%.
like been like he's fought Thanos, he's fought like the united front of the cosmic heroes, which are always more powerful than the Earth-based heroes.
Well, yeah, because you got to be like space gauge
Yeah.
good, right?
Yeah, I would argue he has one of the coolest looks in all of Marvel Comics. He looks like
Yeah.
an insect with these big leathery bat wings, kind of robotic too. Like he just looks sick.
And he always looks like the exact same, so he's identifiable. But they always tweak him a little bit too. So he's got like new extensions and like arms and armor bits. And
Yeah.
anyone who doesn't know, Annihilus comes from the negative zone, and his annihilation wave is like literally just destroyed that entire world, universe, whatever.
Yeah,
and
Huma's a locust, basically.
yeah, like he basically leads a plague of cosmic locusts, and
That's
they're
it,
crazy
yeah.
strong. And his cosmic rod in the negative zone is basically like cosmic cube, right? It's like all powerful. So there's some good stuff. Also, I always love Annihilus and the Annihilation Wave just for like the death of Johnny Storm. It's one of the best superhero deaths of all time. I cried, and I don't even care for Johnny Storm. I cried like a child during that death because it was so. But it was also so badass. Like it was so cool. Like just such a heroic way to go out.
Yeah.
I mean, could I spoil the ending of the? Should we not spoil, or should we spoil things?
Go for it.
Okay, because like Nihilus has a really sick death. I put death in
Yeah.
quotation marks because he always comes back. He's always reborn.
That's he's kind of like Thanos, where you can actually
Right.
kill him off. So you can do cool things where like Annihilus gets killed like 4 or 5 times. You know what I mean? And he gets killed in awesome ways.
Yeah, like in I believe it's the
'cause he's so strong,
2006
right?
Annihilation run that Nova just shoves his hand down Annihilus's throat
Yes.
and just pulls the guts out through his mouth,
Yeah.
and I was like, "Oh my gosh,
Yeah,
this is
anyone who
crazy."
hasn't read Annihilation and like some of the stuff around there is so good. Yeah, I like that one. I think Annihilus is sick. So originally you had Annihilus and then
Fisk.
Kingpin.
Yeah.
How come you had Kingpin on the top 5?
Well,
Like over some of the world or universe ending guys,
because as
or like
much
guy
as
like Carnage.
the universe-ending guys are important. Fisk represents ground level heroes, the street level heroes of Marvel. Because you can put him in any story with a street level hero, and he works.
He's really like their best, like most grounded villain.
Yeah, especially now with what's going on in Daredevil and what's gone on in so many other series in the past, and like, his appearances in multiple mediums now. He is a great villain.
D'Onofrio's so
Yeah,
good.
D'Onofrio is good, and in Spider-Verse, great.
Yeah.
He works as a villain for
Daredevil, Black
Spider-Man,
Widow,
Black
Spider-Man,
any hero that's
Captain America.
Yeah, even
Anybody who
Captain-
wants to do spy stuff, even
Yeah.
he can get into that angle.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
he's so versatile.
Corporate espionage. He can
He's-
mess with Iron Man.
Yeah.
He's so freaking relatable too.
Yeah.
Because the idea of like some rich dude controlling things and being like this like kind of shadowy, overbearing, evil figure is like pretty real world.
Yeah,
Right,
but he's,
yeah.
he's a rich figure that came from like rags to riches. His motives have changed over time. He's been mayor. Like he's lived,
That was a cool story.
yeah. He's gone straight.
Yeah.
Stayed straight for quite a while.
Then came back. I think that was in the 80s too.
Like he's still a physical threat as well. Like
Yeah, you can still have him like fight Captain America at the end of the graphic novel.
yeah,
Yeah.
like, he's not a threat against lots of these characters in like a sense of like mental illness or anything. But he's just a big guy, and he beats people up really good.
He also
And
has
his-
wealth and power behind him.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Like, he doesn't have powers either. Yeah, and if you go in comics as well, like Ultimate Comics, he's great in.
So
Yeah,
good in
oh,
Ultimate
absolutely.
Comics, yeah. Gotta love it. He was not on my list, but he was an honorable mention.
Yep.
What the hell did you have at the bottom of your list there, buddy? I saw you made some corrections.
Well, I'll stick to my initial guns, I guess, just because they were the first thought I had.
Yeah, that's all right.
But for my number 4, I put Galactus. So my 3 before that were Magneto, Doctor Doom, and Carnage, and Galactus is kind of like the first really big world ender. I mean, Doctor Doom can be, and I argued Carnage and Magneto could be too. But this is like my first one that's like, hey, the Avengers are needed.
Galactic
Galactus
scale.
is here.
Yeah,
right.
like, whereas like Magneto is more
Yeah.
Earth scale. When,
My entire life been one of the most iconic ones for that, where every image I ever saw of Galactus was he's in front of the Earth.
Who doesn't know that look, right? Like
Right.
the outline of that helmet, right? Like it's so iconic. Like talking about guys who were designed well. Freaking
Right.
shout back out to Jack Kirby, rest in peace, because. And his design hasn't really changed like at all. He gets
No,
bigger
yeah.
and smaller, but he just looks fantastic. Still.
People
And it's
kept
so
the same
it's such an
design.
insane design, right? You stop and think about it. It's so weird looking, and his
He's got such a
proportions
tall
are kind of
helmet.
off. Yeah, his head is huge. His hands are huge. Like
Those little arms on the side.
yeah, it's crazy. I my argument against Galactus and why I took him off because he was going to be my number 5 for a minute was I would argue that he's not an actual villain. I would argue that Galactus is, and the way that they present him in the comics is more of like a
Force of nature.
yeah, exactly. He's like a cosmic, like they call him a cosmic entity, but he's also just like a cosmic constant.
Yeah.
So he just does his thing. He's a force of nature, right?
He's an inevitability.
But that what makes him also a cool villain
Yeah.
though is that it's so it could not be less personal.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
It's just so cold, and I think it's the scale of it that it's just somebody like so much huger and more powerful and just indomitable than us, and just like the terror of like pure powerlessness. Right.
Right, and I think that's where that's where I was kind of compromising everything else to be like, yep, this is the one that's kind of my big,
This is my
the
guy.
big
I'm putting him in
baddie
here.
that
Yeah.
I just want on there.
That's
yeah.
fair.
I think he also, and I know this is technically kind of a cheat, but he kind of comes by association with the Silver Surfer, and that's just
Yeah.
something that's like it's cool to
I
see them
love
in
the
those
Silver
pictures
Surfer,
together in the
yeah.
panels.
I think, and Silver Surfer is one of those characters that just has captured people forever too, right? And I think both those guys, they're
Yeah.
just so, you know. So you had then who's your 5?
my 5 I had is Thanos,
Okay.
so we did touch on that.
You got
again-
some honorable mentions. You want to make some shout outs while you got it?
Sure.
Or do you want to make some alterations? Are you going to change on it?
I had just to mention them, I guess. The other ones I wanted to mention were Ultron, Dark Phoenix,
Ultron's makes sense. Same with
Yeah.
Phoenix. So iconic. Dark Phoenix, right? Like
Annihilus, and then Fin Fang Foom.
yes! Sorry.
Right? Like, Fin Fang Foom is one I debated as my number 5 for a long time.
Yes, dude.
But, like, Galactus and Thanos, I'm like, oh, they're just more iconic.
Yeah.
But there's a freaking space dragon as a
spent-
Marvel villain,
I spent
right?
so long trying to decide whether I was going to put a troll answer in at number 5 or just like that's where I was going to sneak in my Homer pick, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when Will and I were brainstorming, did you say Fin Fang Foom? We were also just like, yes, always worth
Yeah,
mention.
right?
Just one of the sweetest goofiest characters of all time. He makes absolutely no freaking sense.
No, right? That's why he just got beat by Galactus and Thanos. If it
He's
wasn't
so
them,
sweet.
heck, I
He's
think
so
I'd move them up
sweet.
to number 6. Yeah. I have like a huge, crush on space dragons of any kind.
Okay, Will, you've been waiting patiently, and you teased us with this. Your number 5. Dazzle me, dude.
The Razzle Dazzle.
Hit me.
I'm gonna do the reverse, like how these shows always do. Like, oh, before they go to number 1, they do honorable mentions, but we're doing it in reverse.
Okay.
So my honorable mentions and kind of filling with this whole like silliness was I went more philosophical with my answers. I chose the elder beings of the universe, is like Eternity and the other guys, like the big dudes.
Infinity.
Yeah. What's more scarier? A thing that is evil and has like a beginning and an end, or a thing that is and will be kind of like that whole like beginning and the end, like constant,
Yeah.
that just sits and watches and is like
They're so permanent.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's I think like the god terror, right? Where like their motivations and their thoughts and stuff is like on a level so far above our own that the idea of like what would they be doing and like at what whims do they play with the lives of mortals? You know what I mean? Like that's scary shit.
That would be my honorable like silly mention besides Captain America.
You're just like fishing for the Hydra trolls.
Yeah. But the Maker was another
Hail
good.
Hydra.
The Maker's, yeah.
The Maker is so cool.
My number
man.
5 was either between the Maker or the Black Order.
For anyone who doesn't know, the Maker is Ultimate Universe Reed Richards.
Who's now been
Who's
transported-
now in
Yeah.
our universe. He's in Venom right now, and he was originally in Ultimates by John Hickman when he brought him back as the Maker.
He was also
Very cool.
featured in Absolute Carnage recently.
Yeah, he's
and I just
excellent.
love the way they drew him. Like, it made me rethink how,
Yeah.
like, Reed Richards stretches.
Yeah.
It's like, he almost seems a little more liquidy.
Oh
I
yeah,
really like it.
Reed Richards is a character that is really easy to get stale, but if you're really imaginative, you can do some. He can do some gross stuff with Reed Richards. Sorry, you were saying
The Black Order.
as in like Black Order of Thanos?
Yes.
Okay,
That's
like
pretty
Ebony
cool.
Maw. and-
So on the same theory as like the Marquis of Death being the Teacher of Doom being number 1, the reason why they were number 5 is because they were the like most trusted soldiers of Thanos. And so like you have like Ebony Maw, which is like the leader, the prophet-y sort of dude, and he has like big brain powers. Then you have like Corvus Glaive, which I just like the character design. I like him.
He's super cool.
He's cool. He's an immortal with a like D&D weapon.
Yeah.
The movie did also slightly affect this, so I can't say 100% the comics, but I liked the idea in the movie how they kind of shared they shared his idea, and that's why they were like his most trusted generals, and how like Ebony Maw was going like, oh, your planet, he's like he was the herald of Thanos.
yeah,
I loved that angle on him.
yeah.
So, yeah, that's my list.
Well, I've got one that all you plebeians have left off that you should have mentioned, especially even in your honorable mentions. I've got some honorable mentions. I love Mr. Sinister as X-Men villains. I think he's awesome. He's really creepy. It's like The Fly, right? It's that becoming something other, right? That like non-humanness, because he's always like getting into you and manipulating your genes. It's so creepy, right? You don't want somebody messing around with your insides. That's terrifying. The Leader, because I'm a huge Hulk homer, and I think Leader's probably one of his best villains. He's one of the best threats. He's really, really cool. Honorable mention, the Hulk right now, because
Yes.
he's
I was debating putting him on the list
unreal.
properly.
I put him on the list just so I could talk about how good Immortal Hulk
I was-
is.
he was going to be he was my number 6.
Nice for the Immortal Hulk
Yeah.
specifically. Yeah, it's if you guys
Devil
aren't reading
Hulk,
Immortal
yeah.
Hulk, it's so.
Yeah.
And honestly, because Hulk was like the Avengers' original villain, right? Well, technically like Loki, but
Yeah.
you know what I mean. Like, it works. Loki also on my list
Yeah.
because he for me was a top Thor villain. Number 5, the Red Skull.
yeah, that's a fair one.
It's the Red Skull, man.
Yeah, that's-
I think that he's got everything that lots of these other guys got. He's got the history. He's like helped establish the Marvel brand. He's Cap's big villain. He fights the Fantastic Four. He fights the Avengers. He can fight anybody, right? He's got the science, and like more than that, he's got the thing that like Fisk has got. I think, which is really cool, where he's got like villains working for him
Yeah.
too, right? So like Arnim Zola and stuff.
Crossbones. His daughter.
His
Sin.
daughter, seeing Baron Zemo sometimes.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I love Baron Zemo.
I think Red Skull like pulls all the lists. He killed Cap in one of the best comic deaths of all time.
Yeah.
So surprising. Also one of the most punk moves by Marvel by not putting it in Civil War.
Yeah.
Like what a
Yeah.
rope a dope, man. Oh man, I would be upset. I could see that. Man, he's died and come back to life in like 3 or 4. And if you want to hear a crazy character biology, Red Skull, man.
Yeah.
Like the ways that he's died and come back to life are like ludicrous. It's the type of shit that only happens in comics, and I kind of love that. And I think that if you want to write like a crazy mystery turner and you needed like, and then there's one more level of reveal, it could always just be the Red Skull. I think that's one of the cool things about him. I think that evaluating villains is really fun because it's a cool literary exercise, right? Where you get to like evaluate and break down characters, but it's also just you just gotta look at pieces of art and decide who looks cool and who says the most badass shit, right?
Yeah.
I think that was all for us today. Thank you guys again for coming out, Jordan and Nick. Really happy to do this. It was a lot of fun. Thank you, Will, for hanging out and continuing to be the cranky right hand of doom. Thank you all you guys for listening, and thanks again to Wizards Comics for putting this up and helping us out with this. If you want to see more stuff and see more takes and give us some more topics, please leave some comments. Please send us an email, like us, whatever support you guys got. We had a lot of fun doing this and we want to do some more. So stay tuned for next time. This has been Pulled from the Shelf, and I'm Mike Behrman, and we'll see you next time.